Hey everyone, and welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Emma and I make art videos, and for today's video I am going to show you all how I draw realistic lips as well as stylized lips. So without further ado, let's get started. To start with, I like to work on the line between the lips, and you also want to make sure that you're getting the corners in the right spot. So depending on what angle you are drawing the lips at, they will be even, they might be slightly off. So you do want to have a look at that and just look at your reference image and make sure that you have those in the right spot. And you want to make sure that the center of the lips is centered, and of course this does depend on the angle. Sometimes it might be off center, but for this example I am just drawing some lips front on. So once you've kind of got that line, you can kind of just leave it kind of a bit more faded. We can go in later on just darkening it up once we're sure that we're happy with it. Every lip shape is going to be different, so these shapes might be different for you, but I think it's quite common for the upper lip to have a kind of this shape, kind of like a slight curved shape, and the bottom lips do commonly have the two kind of curved shapes like this, but again it's going to change depending on whose lips you're drawing. So I'm pretty happy with how that's looking at the moment, and I think I'm going to get started on the outer lines. Now, when you are drawing realistic lips that are, more natural, that don't have makeup on, you're not really going to want to do outlines. So I am going to do a very light outline to start with, but you kind of want to shade it more so than keep it as an outline, if that makes sense. So here I just want to get the proportions down, and then I can shade it in a bit later. Since there is a gap in the lips, I am just going to put in slight marks for where the teeth are. This is going to be quite subtle just because it is quite dark. And that is the basic outline and proportions of the lips. So I'm definitely not going to keep these outlines just because the lips aren't so much an outline. I mean, they do have a different shade of colour to the skin, so that's where you want to come in with the shading rather than just keeping it as an outline. Later on, when I show you how I do stylized lips, you will notice that the outlines are very prominent, and I do that on purpose with stylized lips. But when you are drawing realistic lips, you do really want to avoid doing outlines. That's if they're not wearing like really dark lipstick. In that case, you probably will have to do some sort of outline. It'll be a lot harsher, even though, with dark lipstick there will be some shading as well. Another common thing with lips is they have these little lines. So even if you just look at your own lips, there'll probably be a couple of kind of lines spanning from kind of like the top of the lip to the bottom, kind of curving like this. Almost. It's more prominent on certain lips, others not so much. There's not really a whole lot on the lips that I'm drawing today, so I'm not going to do too many. Now I'm going to get started on the shading, and when you are shading realistic lips, you do want to kind of keep it darker in the corners here, just because they are further away than the lips themselves. The lips usually stick out a little bit, so you do want to go darker here in the corners and even along near where the lips join. And then you want to go lighter towards the center of the lips because they generally do protrude. But this will obviously depend on whatever lips you're drawing. Again, it's not always going to be the same, but just as a kind of general rule, this is, I guess, how most lips are drawn. Now that I've started shading, I am going to go in and darken up the darkest areas, and they are generally going to be the corners and along where the lips join, and it'll vary, you know, depending on which part is darkest. So for my example, it is the corners and near where the lips part. The lightest areas are going to be around here and here. When shading the bottom lip, a lot of the time there will be kind of a dark area along here, and that's kind of like a shadow from, I guess, either the top lip or the nose. And because it is just more turned, you know, in towards the mouth, there's just going to be more of a shadow there. And then usually after that there's going to be kind of highlights, you know, kind of around this area. So that area there is going to be generally the lightest area of the lips. So you kind of do a darker shadow along here, and then also a darker shadow along the bottom. Now I'm just going to go in and just accentuate some of the shadows. So there we go, I'm pretty happy with how those ones turned out. And as you can see, even though there is, you know, a line around the lips, they're not just outlined, you know, I've shaded them in, and it makes them look a lot more natural. And especially when you go in with shading the skin around the lips as well, that will definitely help. Now, if I'm going to be drawing a stylized version of these lips, it is going to be quite different. So if you guys want to see how that's done, keep watching. When stylizing lips, you do want to stick to the same kind of process. So I'm going to start by going in with the line between the lips. As you can see with these ones, I went in with a lot of detail, so I kind of followed every bump along the way. But when I'm stylizing, I like to kind of smooth it out a bit more. So here's the first corner, and then we're going to just go up, around, and then back down again. So we're getting a very similar shape, but it is going to be a bit more smooth and neat and more flowing. And that's just how I draw stylized lips. There are plenty of ways to do it, and my way isn't the only way, but I'm just showing you how I do it. So, I mean, that's a little bit off, so I'm just gonna fix that up, and I do want it to be somewhat even. That's looking a little bit better. Usually when I do stylized lips, I don't keep the mouth open, but I might give it a go today. So let's add in that line as well. If I really don't like it, I can always erase it. Now I'm going to put in the lines for the top and bottom lip. And when I am drawing stylized lips, especially with the top lip, I don't draw in the, is that called the Cupid's bow? I don't know if that's a Cupid's bow or if this thing is the Cupid's bow, but anyway, the kind of, the point here, I don't include that, I just make it one big curve. And a lot of like a lot of Disney characters have these style of lips, and like a lot of more stylized work, and personally I just like the look of those kinds of lips, so that's just how I draw them. If you want to include that point, you can. This is just how I do it. And then once that is done, then it's time to put in the bottom lip. And when I am drawing stylized lips, a lot of the time I won't join this line to the corners. And I mean, most of the time I am colouring the lips in, so if I'm doing black outlines, I will make this a black outline, and then I will just colour it in whichever colour it is to the corner, if that makes sense. With the top lip, I generally do have it joined, just because the top lip is generally more going to be in shadow. And when I do shade in a top lip, I usually just shade in the whole thing. When you're stylizing, you can get away with a lot more things, and I do try to keep it, you know, somewhat realistic, but rather than kind of going in and shading, you know, dark areas and lighter areas, I just go in with the one shade. I also need to shade in the lips, which the teeth, which I will probably make darker, but that's kind of the basic outline for how I draw stylized lips. So I'm just going to go in now and darken everything. So I'm just going to darken in the outlines, because whenever I do stylized work, I generally do work with outlines. I personally just like the look of it. And as you can see, my lines are quite smooth. I don't really add in, you know, any of the bumps along the way. Although I am adding in just this bump here, just because I think it might look a little weird if I didn't include it. I also do play with the line weight. I'm not doing it so much with this piece, although I will thicken this bottom one, just because whenever a line is more likely to be in shadow, I think it is a good idea to kind of thicken those lines. And if I was colouring this, I would still add a shadow underneath it. I just do like to add some line weight because it makes your art look a bit more interesting. Okay, so that's basically the outlines done. And I'm just going to go in and shade it and make it a bit darker and give it a little bit more form. And what I might also do is just leave an area completely white just for the highlights. If I am doing lips like this in colour, a lot of the time I won't add a highlight mark, but just because I am doing it in black and white today, might make it a little more interesting. Actually, I might colour over that and then just erase an area for the highlights. No, let's just leave it coloured in. I don't think it's super necessary. Now it's going to look a little patchy. Try and fix that up. I should have just left it, oh well. And yeah, if I was going to be shading the entire thing, I would probably do a slight shadow underneath as well. But that is how I draw realistic lips and stylized lips. So there is a big difference between the two, but overall they still follow the same guidelines and you know how you're drawing lips, and that's kind of just what stylizing is. I think it's really important to know how to draw something realistic before you stylize it, just because you're going to have a better understanding of how it works. And I personally think that just drawing realism will help with your skills no matter what style you draw or paint in. So yeah, anyway, that is all from me today. Hopefully you guys enjoyed today's video. Also, I am now on Patreon, so if you'd like to support my channel and get some cool rewards in return, you can check that out over at patreon.com/mxmaree. I offer things like colouring pages, mini prints, and even commissioned drawings. So if that sounds good to you, please check it out. And yeah, that is all from me today. So thank you all for watching. I hope you're all having a fantastic day, and I will see you all in my next video.